Now, let's continue with Alien Agenda Unmasked. In this part of the series, we're going to look at 3 Semitic books. One of them is the Nag Hammadi Library. The other is the Book of Enoch, the Ethiopian Book of Enoch. And the last one in this part will be the Dead Sea Scrolls. These 3 books give quite a bit of information about what the Nephilim did and what the fallen angels actually look like, including the God. And I'm going to show, as I've already proven in my Hidden Human Story series, that the Gnostic Demiurge is Cronus, and that he was considered androgynous. And I'm going to show that the fallen angels and other angels were snow white, and that a mysterious being called the antecedent of time was described as frightening and with a head that was snow white. Now, Enoch was said to have walked amongst the angels after they brought him up in a ship, and he described these angels as snow white, and some of these beings, this antecedent of time, as having a snow white head. And after a certain point in his experience, he was so frightened that he urinated himself. So I'm going to read from some of these passages, and at some point I may do an addendum to the series and read the entire Book of Enoch. Now, there's 3 books of Enoch. There's an Ethiopian version, which is very descriptive, a Slavic version, which also is descriptive, and a Jewish version, which begins to get into some different kind of description. And Enoch is transformed into the angel Metatron, and this rabbi has a experience. But for the sake of trying to get at this mystery of how these chronides connect to these angels and the God of the Semitic religion, and back to this androgynous gray elder race being, I'm going to stick with the Ethiopian Book of Enoch. So I'm going to read various passages now from those 3 books. Okay, this first one will be from the Ethiopian Book of Enoch. Here we go. And Semyaz, being their leader, said unto them, I fear that perhaps you will not consent that this deed should be done, and I alone will become responsible for this great sin. But they all responded to him, Let us all swear an oath, and bind everyone among us by a curse, not to abandon this suggestion, but to do the deed. Then they all swore together and bound one another by the curse. And they were all together 200, and they descended into Ardus, which is the summit of Hermon. And they called the mount Armin, for they swore and bound one another by a curse. That is page 15 from the Ethiopian Book of Enoch. That is part of the Old Testament pseudepigrapha by James Charlesworth. Now I'm going to read a few more passages out of that book. But now the giants who are born from the union of the spirits and the flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth, because their dwelling shall be upon the earth and inside the earth. That is from the Book of Enoch, page 21. Notice they said inside the earth. Okay, let's read on. And they lifted me up into one place where there were the ones like the flaming fire. And when they so desire, they appear like men, and they took me into a place of whirlwind in the mountain. The top of its summit was reaching into heaven. Page 22 of this Ethiopian Book of Enoch from the Old Testament pseudepigrapha. And as you just heard, he was brought up in some kind of device, a whirlwind. It continues. And Uriel said to me, Here shall stand in many different appearances the spirits of the angels, which have united themselves with women. They have defiled the people, and will lead them into error, so that they will offer sacrifices to the demons as unto gods, until the great day of judgment, in which they shall be judged till they are finished. And the women whom the angels have led astray will be the peaceful ones. So I, Enoch, I saw the vision of the end of everything alone, and none among human beings will see as I have seen. Page 23, Ethiopian Book of Enoch. And I saw the sons of the holy angels walking upon the flame of fire. Their garments were white, and their overcoats, and the light of their faces was like snow. Page 49, Ethiopian Book of Enoch. Now, isn't that interesting? It's like they had a white overcoat, which is something that a scientist would wear. Next passage from the Ethiopian Book of Enoch. And I saw countless angels 100,000 times, 100,000, 10 million times, 10 million encircling that house. Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, Phanuel, and numerous other holy angels that are in heaven above go in and out of that house. Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, Phanuel, and numerous other holy angels that are countless. With them is the antecedent of time. His head is white and pure like wool, and his garment is indescribable. I fell on my face, my whole body mollified, and my spirit transformed. Page 50 from the Ethiopian Book of Enoch from the Old Testament pseudepigrapha. Now, in this Book of Enoch, he describes the birth of Noah, and Noah is described as Caucasoid, but slightly different, and not like normal humans, but like angels. So here is what was written. And after some days, my son Methuselah took a wife for his son Lamech, and she became pregnant by him and bore him a son. And his body was white as snow and red as a rose. The hair of his head as white as wool, and his demdema beautiful. And as for his eyes, when he opened them, the whole house glowed like the sun. Rather, the whole house glowed even more exceedingly. And when he arose from the hands of the midwife, he opened his mouth and spoke to the Lord with righteousness. And his father Lamech was afraid of him, and fled, and went to Methuselah his father. And he said to him, I have begotten a strange son. He is not like an ordinary human being, but he looks like the children of the angels of heaven to me. His form is different, and he is not like us. His eyes are like the rays of the sun, and his face glorious. It does not seem to me that he is of me, but of angels, and I fear that a wondrous phenomenon may take place on the earth in his days. Page 86, Ethiopian Book of Enoch, from the Old Testament Pseudepigrapha. Now let me read to you the part where Enoch was so afraid that he urinated himself. This is rather strange. Now, this is pretty much after he was taken up and shown various things about the sun and the moon and the stars, and told what the Nephilim were doing, which was basically eating people and torturing the average human as they ruled over them. And he was shown the destruction that was coming. So here is what is written. In the year 500, in the 7th month, on the 14th day of the month, in the life of Enoch, in the same parable I saw that the heaven of heavens was quaking and trembling with a mighty tremulous agitation. And the forces of the Most High and the angels, 10,000 times a million and 10 million times 10 million, were agitated with great agitation. And the antecedent of time was sitting on the throne of his glory, surrounded by the angels and the righteous ones. Then a great trembling and fear seized me, and my loins and kidneys lost control. So I fell upon my face. Then Michael sent another angel from among the holy ones, and he raised me up. And when he had raised me up, my spirit returned, for I had fainted, because I could not withstand the sight of these forces, and because heaven has stirred up and agitated itself. Then Michael said unto me, What have you seen that has so disturbed you? This day of mercy has lasted until today, and he has been merciful and long-suffering toward those that dwell upon the earth. And when this day arrives, and the power, the punishment, and the judgment, which the Lord of spirits has prepared for those who do not worship the righteous judgment, for those who deny the righteous judgment, and for those who take his name in vain, it will become a day of a covenant for the elect and the inquisition for the sinners. On that day, 2 monsters will be parted. One monster, a female named Leviathan, in order to dwell in the abyss of the ocean, over the fountains of water, and the other a male called Behemoth, which holds his chest in an invisible desert, whose name is Dundayan, east of the Garden of Eden, wherein the elect and the righteous ones dwell, wherein my grandfather was taken, the 7th from Adam, the first man whom the Lord of spirits created. Then I asked the second angel, in order that he may show me how strong these monsters are, how they were separated on this day and were cast, the one into the abysses of the ocean, and the other into the dry desert. And he said to me, You, son of man, according to the degree to which it will be permitted, you will know the hidden things. That's pages 40 and 41 of the Book of Enoch. So he urinated himself because he was so frightened. Now I'm going to read a little bit further to show you that these angels showed Enoch about the stars and the earth. Here's what was written. Then the other angel who was going with me was showing me the hidden things, what is first and last in heaven, above it, beneath the earth, in the depth, in the extreme ends of heaven, the extent of heaven, the storerooms of the winds, how the winds are divided, how they are weighed, how the winds divide and dissipate, the openings of the winds, each according to the strength of its wind, the power of the light of the moon, and how it is the right amount, the divisions of the stars, each according to its nomenclature, and all the subdivisions, the thunders according to the places where they fall, and the subdivisions of the lightnings according to their flashing of light, and the velocity of the obedience of the whole array of them. So the thunders have their respective moments of rest with patience, and each thunder is marked by its respective sound. Neither the thunder nor the lightning becomes disjoined one from the other. Both go together in a single breeze and do not part. For when the lightning flashes light, the thunder utters its sound. Also at that moment, the wind causes the thunder to come to rest and divides equally the time between each one of them. For the reservoir of their moments of thunderings is like sand, so each one of them is restrained with a bridle and turned back by the power of the wind and driven in this manner all over the numerous corners of the earth. So I'm going to continue on just a little bit more. He continues and talks about rain on page 41 and 42. And so forth. So here you have it that these angels were trying to show him things about the weather, things about the moon. Lightning and thunder go together. They're not separated. And stars. So he was shown information about the nomenclature about the stars, which is the same thing that modern day UFO abductees such as Travis Walton and Betty and Barney Hill were shown, as you will see later in this series. So now I want to go on and read from a different Semitic book. Now let's take a look at the Nag Hammadi Library. From the hypostasis of the archons, the reality of the rulers. This is what is written. This ruler, by being androgynous, made himself a vast realm, an extent without limit. And he contemplated creating offspring for himself, and created for himself 7 offspring, androgynous, just like their parent. And he said to his offspring, "It is I who am God of the entirety." And Zoe, life, the daughter of Pistis Sophia, cried out and said to him, "You are mistaken, Sakla," for which is the alternative name for Yaldabaoth. She breathed into his face, and her breath became a fiery angel for her. And that angel bound Yaldabaoth and cast him down into Tartarus below the abyss. Now when his offspring Sabaoth saw the force of that angel, he repented and condemned his father and his mother manner. He loathed her, but he sang songs of praise up to Sophia and her daughter Zoe. And Sophia and Zoe caught him up and gave him charge of the 7th heaven, below the veil, between above and below. And he is called God of the forces, Sabaoth, since he is up above the forces of chaos. For Sophia established him. There, I have taught you about the pattern of the rulers, and the matter in which it was expressed, and their parent and their universe. But I said, "Sir, am I also from their matter? You together with your offspring are from the primeval Father, from above, out of the imperishable light their souls are come. Thus the authorities cannot approach them because of the spirit of truth present within them. And all who have become acquainted with this way exist deathless in the midst of a dying mankind. Still, that sown element, sperma, will not become known now. Instead, after 3 generations, it will come to be known and it has freed from them from the bondage of the authorities' error. Then I said, Sir, how much longer? He said to me, until the moment when the true man within a modeled form reveals the existence of the Spirit of truth which the Father has sent. Then he will teach them about everything, and he will anoint them with the unction of life eternal, given him from the undominated generation. Then they will be freed of blind thought, and they will trample underfoot death, which is of the authorities, and they will ascend into the limitless light where this sown element belongs. Then the authorities will relinquish their ages, and their angels will weep over their destruction, and their demons will lament their death. Then all the children of the light will be truly acquainted with the truth and their root, and the Father of the entirety, and the Holy Spirit. They will all say with a single voice, the Father's truth is just, and the Son presides over the entirety, and from everyone unto the ages of ages, holy, 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 amen. This is from the Nag Hammadi Library, Hypostasis of the Archons, pages 168 to 169, translated by James R. Robinson. Now, from mythology, we know that Cronus was cast into Tartarus, and his son took over. This is the same thing as the Demiurge. And we are told that this Demiurge, Yaldabaoth, is androgynous. We are also told that his children that he created were androgynous. We are also told that there were people or entities or elder race beings that were more powerful than him and came before him. We were also told that the human race is not of their matter, and that we have a soul, and they cannot touch our soul. We are also told that this truth is going to be known, and it is going to destroy this control that this Demiurge and his angels have. It's going to be revealed. Now, this sounds like Jesus Christ, but I do believe we have much, much further yet to reveal. Now, I'm going to read one more passage here from the Nag Hammadi Library. It says, a veil exists between the world above and the realms that are below, and shadow came into being beneath the veil, and that shadow became matter, and that shadow was projected apart, and what she had created, a production from the matter, like an aborted fetus. And it assumed a plastic form molded out of shadow, and became an arrogant beast resembling a lion. It was androgynous, as I have already said, because it was from matter that it derived. Opening his eyes, he saw a vast quantity of endless matter, and he turned arrogant, saying, I am God, and there is no one but me. That's page 167 from the Hypostasis of the Archons, the Nag Hammadi Library, by James R. Robinson. Now, the most important thing here is he's described as an aborted fetus when he came in. And fetus has no hair, has a big head. And the description of a fetus is the same thing that people use to describe these so-called gray aliens. And you'll see that as I talk about Travis Walton's testimony. Now, let's get into one other book here, the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls has some very interesting books in it. One of them is the Book of Giants. And what is in here is incredibly revealing. There are several parts of the text that are missing throughout these Dead Sea Scrolls, but enough is there to be able to put the puzzle together. Let me read to you from the Dead Sea Scrolls in the Book of Giants. Concerns the death of our souls and all his comrades. And Oya told him what Gilgamesh said to him. And it was said, concerning the leader has cursed the potentates, and the giants were glad at his words. Then he turned and left. Page 249, The Dead Sea Scrolls, translated by Michael Wise, Martin Abegg, and Edward Cook. Okay, first of all, Gilgamesh is the equivalent of Heracles, the son of Zeus. He's considered a giant. Now let's continue on. Again, in the Book of Giants, it says, to Enoch, the noted scribe, and he will interpret for us the dream. Thereupon his fellow Oya declared and said to the giants, I too had a dream this night, O giants. And behold, the ruler of heaven came down to earth, and such is the end of the dream. Thereupon all the giants and monsters grew afraid and called Mawe. He came to them, and the giants pleaded with him, and sent him to Enoch, the noted scribe. They said to him, go to you, that you have heard his voice. And he said to him, he will, and interpret the dreams. How long the giants have to live. Page 249, The Dead Sea Scrolls, out of the Book of Giants, translated by Michael Wise, Martin Abegg, and Edward Cook. Now, what's important about this passage is it just gave it away that there were not only giants at the time of the Chronides, but monsters. Monsters. So what were these monsters? And I believe that's answered further in these Dead Sea Scrolls. And I'm going to read 2 more passages to show you that. Now, from the vision of Amram. Amram was the father of Moses. It says, in my vision, the vision of the dream, and there were 2 figures arguing over me and saying, and holding a great dispute over me. So I asked them, how is it that you have authority over me? They said, we rule and have authority over the human race. And they said to me, which one of us? I lifted my eyes and saw one of them, whose appearance was dreadfully frightening. His clothing was multicolored and very dark, and I saw another, and he was pleasant in his appearance, and his face was laughing, and he was covered in white. That's from the vision of Amram, page 435, out of the Dead Sea Scrolls, translated by Michael Weiss, Martin Abegg, and Edward Cook. Again, here we have 2 creatures arguing over him, and he is the father of Moses. And I have seen different translations of this passage, and from different people that have tried to translate these Dead Sea Scrolls, and one of them described this character that he saw as serpent-like, a visage like a viper. Now that wasn't described in my book. That was translated by a different person. I've seen that, which is interesting. So they don't even have a consistent translation of the Dead Sea Scrolls, or they're specifically taking out the fact that he described those beings as having a visage like a viper, serpent-like. Now, there is a short passage in the Book of Giants that is incredibly important. And it too is missing fragments. But there is enough here to kind of give you a very good clue as to what was going on during the time of the Chronides. It says 200 donkeys, 200 asses, 200 rams of the flock, 200 goats, 200 beasts of the field from every animal, from every bird, for miscegenation. Page 247, The Book of Giants from the Dead Sea Scrolls, translated by Michael Weiss, Martin Abegg, and Edward Cook. Okay, so basically this is, there was also a header that said this is what the angels were doing before this passage in my version of the Dead Sea Scrolls. So they were genetically engineering their line, their seed, their genetics with animals and creating miscegenated creatures or monsters. And I've already read to you previously that when this flood was supposed to come to punish these evil Nephilim, the monsters were even afraid, not just the giants. I'm also going to show you another esoteric script down the road that tells you how many giants were killed in the flood. But for this part, what you have seen now is that these angels appeared like men when they wanted to, were as white as snow, were very powerful, were mating with human women, creating giants, which were the Nephilim that abused humans. They were also creating monsters between their genetics and animals. And before this massive flood destruction that was coming, the giants and the monsters knew something was coming, and they were incredibly afraid. So we now know that these Semitic books have given us enough clues to describe the angels as being Caucasoid looking, man-like, beautiful, snow white, but doing things genetically they shouldn't have. We also know that there were separate beings. Some were referred to as frightening. Specifically, the antecedent of time, it was said by Enoch, his head was snow white, so he had no hair. It was incredibly frightening. The father of Moses, Amram, says that there were two beings arguing over him who were absolutely frightening looking. And in some translations of that passage in the Dead Sea Scrolls by other scholars, that being was described as serpent-like, a viper, a face of a viper. Does this sound like those gray aliens and Nordic aliens? Yes, it does. And I have no reason to doubt the Ethiopian Book of Enoch, because it was kept out of the hands of these priests who were going around the world destroying all of the evidence, calling everything satanic of what had happened on this planet. Now we have the Smithsonian doing it, destroying the skeletal remains, dictating to us what history was. Well, I specifically know from my experiences dealing with the Lovelock Cave mummies that things are not being properly scientifically studied, and that these old skeletons are purposely being destroyed and removed from scientific investigation. So we have a pretty darn good description now of the angels, this other group of beings that were said to be serpent-like. The angels were it could be in the appearance of a man and were snow white. The other serpent-like beings were described as white, snow white. We know that they were messing around genetically with humans and animals, creating Nephilim who were giants who were abusing the humans. And I've shown before in my other books, they were eating people. They turned against the people and started to eat them when the food ran out. And we know that they were creating some kind of hybrid monsters. And I'd probably start to hook that up with the mythological tales of mermaids, werewolves, wild men, griffins, and so forth. So that's it for this part. We're going to move on and start looking at other books and sources to put this puzzle together. Thank you.